Well, hello YouTube friends. Thanks for stopping by. This is Greg. Happy Thanksgiving to you from Florida. I finished cleaning up a couple of old axes that I brought up from the farm and put some of them on fresh handles. Thought I'd make a video. A little while earlier in the season, when Hurricane Matthew was rolling over my properties in Caribbean and Florida, I was hanging out in the barn comforting the pack animals, hoping the roof didn't blow off. And I noticed a barrel over by one of the end stalls where we keep a lot of our edge tools. And as I piddled around looking at it and looking for something to do to bring normalcy that seems to calm down the horses and mules and a couple of my donkeys that get to hang out in the barn too, I decided to put some fresh edges. And just, I think the smell of bar oil and the sound of sharpening blade tools on a strop seemed to calm them down. And it struck me that almost everything in the barrel, including the McLeod tool and some of the shovels and forestry service stuff that made its way down into Haiti, were all from council tools here in America. And probably 10, 11 years ago, a friend of mine and his roommate were doing a drive north to the trailhead where we were going to do a long section hike on the AT from I think Damascus to Harper's Ferry, and we stopped in Raleigh, North Carolina for a break and found a family-owned brick-and-mortar hardware store. There's not a lot of them left in the modern age, are there, friends? So we decided to go in and look for batteries for my headlamp or something, and on one of their walls they had a display of council tool axes and mauls, which sent me back to the front of the store looking for a shopping cart. I think I bought a dozen of their, they call them camp axes, but they're just hatchets. Bought a half a dozen of their boys' axes on 28-inch handles. Two of their forestry services boys' axe, identical to the others, but painted black. I did buy from their Velvet Cut line one of the boys' axes and a Hudson Bay pattern, both on 28-inch handles. I did not buy the felling axe, though I did get a 3.5-pound American felling axe, not one of their standard line axes painted red, but one with the phantom bevels on it. I did not purchase any of their double bit axes on the wall because I had my grandfather's double bit and a roached out old one that we had found at a junk store somewhere, and he just couldn't resist bringing it home. What else? Bought a couple of 3.5-pounders, one of which, this one, found its way into my Fallers kit with my Mac Pro 850 and spent most of its life just banging wedges. Just recently put a new handle on it, put it on a wire wheel. Got a, what else that day? Anyway, I'll turn around and show you some of the council tool axes that I have. I am convinced more than ever, looking at these things and checking out their edges, that of all the American axe companies that survive, and most of the ones, Collins, True Timber, are now probably made in China or Mexico, but there is one axe company left standing out of Lake Waccamaw area in North Carolina, and they build the same high quality tools that they have built since the 1800s. And in my mind, they compare preferably and favorably to most of the Swedish axe companies, and equally with one of them. So let me turn this around and I'll show you some of my favorite council tool axes. Come on. Hey, let me see if I can manage this from my tripod with an iPhone on it. One of the axes that we got in that family-owned hardware store in Raleigh, I wish I could think of the name of it. I think it was Brooks Brothers or something, but they make suits, don't they? Should be able to find it. Raleigh, North Carolina. How many family-owned brick-and-mortar hardware stores probably exist? But one of the tools that we bought were a dozen of these little guys, and what attracted me to them is that with the petite size, they were perfect to fit in both my haversacks. They're a good little weight for a camp axe, a bushcrafting tool. I was looking for something that would replace my Hudson Bay Robert Mann edge tool hatchet that my grandpa gave me when I was little, or his double bit saddle cruiser by O.A. Norland that had been the staples in my bushcraft kit. I had tried some Condor makes a nice bushcraft size axe, but it's a little too big to be a hatchet and not quite big enough to get two hands on to do real work. They do a tremendous job with it, and it's super affordable. But I think these were like $20, $25. We got a dozen of them. This one was relatively new and unused. I peeled it out of the milk crate that was under my workbench at the farm to bring it out to just show you one that is relatively unused. I hear a lot on the internet about people that buy these, and they say something like it's a pretty good axe for a really good price, or it's a good axe considering the price. It's a good axe, period. Heard tell that these things don't come right out of the package shaving sharp, but I wouldn't rub your finger along this one unless you want to. If you're going to believe that kind of stuff, I wouldn't rub your finger on it unless you're ready for a trip to the hospital. You'd probably cut your finger off with this one. But these are awesome. The only thing that I've done with this one is accent the edge on the top so that you can draw a ferro rod across it and get a spark. It's a good little carver. I've carved a couple of spoons and bowls with this thing. And just a great, great option for a bushcraft kit. And besides that, the price point is ridiculous. I think the weight and feel and fit and finish of it, grain isn't perfect, but I'm not sure that's super important for a smaller hatchet or an axe. But to get anything close to this, you'd probably have to spend $120, $130 for one of the Swedish axes that I don't think compares as favorably with the fit and finish of what this one is. And we'll have a talk about that in a minute too. The next treasure that we got on our trip were some 2 1/4 pound boys axes. Got half a dozen of these. This was the newest one. When I brought it home, it still had its little rubber cover on the edge here. Most of the other ones we have are a little burnt and used. This one right out of the box, not doing really anything to it. Little slice paper. Oh, not so good, not so fast, Gregory. Great size, good fit for bushcrafting, very, very packable. I understand now in the modern age council tool will make this on a 24-inch handle. I'm not sure if that'd be my favorite thing. This one is still pretty packable. I have a Frost River Isle Royale pack, and it has a loop on it where this thing will fit down in it and the handle will go out the side. It's very comfortable for a traditional bushcraft kit. A really good weight, and with a 28-inch handle you can still get two hands on it and do some work and splitting with it. For some of my friends, having a 24-inch handle would be preferable to this one on a 28. I think this was about $30. Last I looked on Amazon, maybe it was $35. This is what I consider to be probably the best value for a bushcraft axe in the market today. Extraordinarily good steel. I think it's $10.50 for these guys, and we got half a dozen of these things. They're awesome. Here's another version of it that was bought at the same time. It's well loved. Again, the only thing we've done to it is accent the edge to make it a 90-degree edge on the upper bout. This one recently had a new handle put on it after years of love, and I don't think I go anywhere on the farm without one of these in my saddle kit for limbing trees around the paddocks and that kind of thing. Put another 28-inch handle on it. This one is one of my handles that has nice, perfect, straight up and down grain. I don't put secondary step wedges or step pins in them if I do a really good job and have a nice angle of the kerf being pushed out by the wedge. I don't think they need it. This one's the same age as the one I just showed you that looks brand new. It's just had a little bit of a lot more love on it. I did not bring either of the Velvacut axes that we bought on that same trip 10 or 12 years ago. The Hudson Bay pattern found its way into my car kit. The 2 1/4 ounce boy's axe in the Velvacut line wound up in my wife's car kit. I think we paid maybe $110 for them with leather sheaths 10 years ago. Last I looked on the internet, I think they're about $135. So for $100 more than the previous one, you could have a Velvacut if you wanted to. This I call the poor man's version of the Velvacut. It was marketed with either under the military contract or the federal contract. This one says, it'll focus in on it there, FSS was a forestry service stamp, and I think it stood for Federal Supply Service. This one came with a Velvacut handle with a very nicely grained hickory handle on it. Came shaving sharp. We got 2 of these. I think this is 1048 steel, made maybe to the government specs for the Forestry Service, these little guys. I consider this one the poor man's Velvacut boy's axe. You can go spend $135 for a Velvacut boy's axe if you want, but this one has a nicely grained Velvacut handle on it. Has a little bit different steel from their standard line, and is super utilitarian, and you can get them, if you can get them. Used to be able to find these on some of the websites if you just look for Forestry Service boy's axe. Maybe they had overstock that they would sell under the contracts, but you could get one of these for about 60 bucks. And you can't get close to the quality of this without spending $100 more for a Swedish axe. And to me, this is this and the $35 basic one from their standard line are probably the best value for a woodcraft axe on the market today. Absolutely the best quality. Here's an old kind of roached out double bit. Originally it was painted blue, had more blue on it before the last time I dressed it and fixed it. Just put a new handle on it again, no metal step in on it. And if I remember, the sticker really doesn't exist on it anymore, but it used to say Rawhide Series by Council Tools. I think, gosh, it's probably been 30 years ago that my grandfather and I found this in a used tool store, not quite a junk store, but not really a hardware store, on the Appalachian Trail, and he just couldn't resist having it, so we cut off the handle, put it in a backpack, and drug that thing from Pennsylvania to Maine at 3.5 pounds at a day when I wouldn't have 3.5 pounds in my pack weight for anything. Kind of crusty and roached out, has a nice edge, spends a lot of time out at the wood pile, and spent a lot of time in my truck for a while. This is my grandfather's 5-pounder. It still has its sticker on it, still has some of the red paint from back in the day. This is one of his utility workhorses. His other favorites that I have, and just put new handles on them this year. I think there was something so sentimental about it that I didn't want to change the handles out because they were his and his hands had been on them. But I don't really like having things that I don't use, so I took their crusty handles off and rehung them with Tennessee hickory with handles that I made for myself. And his other ones are 2 Sager chemicals in 1926 Puget Sound, and more of a cruiser size that I put on a 28-inch handle from 1947. He also has a Kelly Perfect Black Raven that's kind of a beater, and a Collins Legitimus that's a Hudson Bay pattern. And I think another Kelly, I don't remember what the name of it is on it, another Puget Sound pattern. We'll get those on handles and maybe make a video of just my grandfather's favorite double bit miters. But this was one of his. When we bought axes in the hardware store that day, did not purchase any of their double bits because at the time I already had his kind of roached out blue rawhide model and this quintessential red one from his stock back in the day. There's a couple of weeks back I was considering whether putting this old 3.5 pounder in a vinegar bath, and chose not to, instead just to put it on a wire wheel, and made it a new octagon handle. I think it was on a 28-inch handle before. We got 2 of these 12 years ago in that hardware store in Carolina, and this one immediately found its way into my power saw kit as a faller's axe, and spent most of its time just banging wedges. It has a new handle on an octagon. Found a very nicely grained piece to put this favorite one on, and it will be a little more loved. I did this to any other axe, I'd cut my finger off. This edge has never been dressed. It will still, do limbing and axe stuff, because, if it's in your faller's kit with your power saw, it needs to still be an axe, even though it's going to mostly be used to bang wedges in. But I don't remember where we were. It was on the Pacific Crest Trail, again with my grandpa. And, to be an old Irish Catholic gentleman, he was so Jewish in the way that he'd ask leading questions as part of his education process for his grandson. And we were in a hardware store on the Pacific Crest Trail. I think we were still in Northern California. And there was a wall display, I think, of True Temper axes. And he says, "Gregory, Sean, go over there and have a look at them. Tell me what you notice is the difference between those axes and our axes." I thought, oh, gee, there's going to be a test. And he says, "It's not a trick. Look at the edges and look at the handles." I thought, well, all right. And I said, "Well, Grandpappy, the handles are shiny and they don't have edges on them yet." And he says, "Why do you think that is?" "I don't know, Papa. I guess so the axes don't get fingerprints in the store, and they figure whoever's going to buy one and take it home knows what to do with it when they get it home," which I think was the case back in those days. If you bought any axe back when I was a boy, whether it was Kelly, True Temper, or Collins, the Norlands that we got had more of an edge than anybody else's, but basically profiled, sometimes not. One of the double bits that we got that was Collins was barely profiled at all, and I think they assumed that whoever the end users were knew what they were doing when they would get it home and could profile it, put an edge on it, dress it to their personal preference. So this is one of the 3.5 pounders that I have on a shorter handle that has just been in my faller's kit. And incredibly utilitarian, great weight. If you've ever had a 3.5 pounder on a bigger handle, man, you should make it a 28-inch octagon and see just how good that feels in your hand. It's awesome. This one, I think I mentioned when we were buying 1.5 axes, 2.5 dozen axes in that hardware store that day. I did not buy one of the Velvacut axes that was their felling axe. Instead, I got this guy. It's a 3.5 pound American felling axe on a, still almost says council tool still on it, on a 36-inch handle. Pretty nice grain on the end of the handle. Look, it still has its original metal pin. Council, I don't know why you put metal pins and stuff. I wish you'd quit and make them out of wood. What did this one bring to mind? Oh, somebody on the internet that said that the fit and finish of council tools didn't compare to the Swedish axes. Wow. Nothing could be further from the truth. Behind me, let me see, yeah, if I move over a little bit. Behind me I have two pictures of some Gransfors Brooks axes, who were the quintessential market leader of Swedish axes, along with S.A. Wetterlings. And in the modern age, if you look at a Gransfors axe, they come out of the forge with their carbon slags still on them, and the artisan craftsmen who dress the edges dress them to a razor sharp edge and polish them. Back in the day, it was not the case. I think earlier in the last century they went into receivership and bankruptcy, and in their pre-bankruptcy days, if you look at the top picture that I outlined with a Sharpie because the background was red and the axe was red, this axe head came off a 28-inch handle from an axe that I purchased in El Salvador on a surfing trip. And I was attracted to it because it was very reminiscent of my Collins Legitimus Hudson Bay and my lifelong favorite O.A. Norland Hudson Bay pattern. And I think Gransfors must have made these. It says Gransfors right on the label, but I think they were made for a Hispanic market. I don't know where else they sold them, but this particular one in the top picture came from El Salvador, and it was from early in the 70s, and I think probably pre-bankruptcy, pre-receivership. The picture underneath is one of my grandfather's heads that was marketed in Europe. It used to have a sticker on it. It was painted blue, nearly on the same pattern as these council tool axes. So back in the day, before they realized or discovered they couldn't compete in the marketplace, couldn't make money, and went bankrupt, they were finished nearly identically to the council tools. One of my friends has a piece of literature where Gransfors claims that they're hand forged. They're not. You can go on YouTube and look at the video. I think a video or two of the process and a shop tour of the council tool factory. And there's a handful of the process and the factory tour at Gransfors. And they're made exactly the same way with power hammers and drop forges. An artisan craftsman attends to them on the drop forge. With the Gransfors Brooks, after they're roughly profiled and the drop forge, the artisan craftsman then hand finishes just the edge, leaving the carbon slag on the rest of the head. Hand finishes the edge to a sharp edge and a mirror polish before putting them in a sheath, hafting them with nice American hickory handles and sending them to America to be sold at prices starting at about $130 for their little wildlife hatchet, upwards of $200, $250 for the American felling axe, small forest axe and Scandinavian forest axe are in the 200, 250, 200 and a quarter range, and I consider to be unfinished. Still with the carbon slag right out of the drop forge. But major props, the artisan craftsmen that dress the edges do a really good job. I've had some Gränsfors Brooks that had really wonky grain in the handles and never broken one. And I have a Scandinavian forest axe that had perfect grain that the handle broke when I was bucking a 13-inch piece of maple on the ground and came through from the backside of a knot, and not only broke the handle but peeled off a corner of the beard nearly an inch long. That happens when you're dealing with hardwoods with knots. I think Gregory Shawn opinion alert coming. I wonder if the Gränsfors were not designed for coniferous softwoods in Europe as opposed to the hardwoods here in America. Major props to their customer service, though. They're very, very good and very, very quick. And even though the broken corner and the split handle have nothing really to do with their quality at all. Only good things to say about their quality and their business model. Their customer service was great. And major props for the new owner. When they were in receivership and bankruptcy, a new owner took them over and also purchased their top competitor, S.A. Wetterlings, and changed the business model of both companies to go from finished axes like this to relatively unfinished axes where they come right out of the forge and then just the working edge are profiled, hand-dressed, sharpened, and polished by artisan craftsmen. And major props to the new owner for saving both those companies and developing a business model that enabled them to make money. But compared to the fit and finish of the council tool axes, I consider them comparatively unfinished as they come out of the drop forge with their slag on them. In recent days, I don't have one. I would love to, just so I could own another council tool axe, because what's not to love? But Council Tool collaborated with Axe Junkies founder Rooster and came up with a woodcraft backpacking axe, and it looks like it's following the same kind of model as Gränsfors, S.A. Wetterlings, Hultafors, Holtzbrooks, Husqvarna, and that they come right out of the drop forge with their carbon slag on them and are finally finished just on the edge. And if I remember right from David Smith at High Carbon Steel Loves informative YouTube channel, I think they come dressed kind of with a chisel, with a Scandinavian grind, as opposed to the high convex that attend most axes. And I wonder if that degree of fit and finish isn't a response to the popularity of the Swedish axes, albeit I consider part of their business model that saved their companies being comparatively unfinished or less than finished compared to the council tools. The only company in Sweden that's turning out something the quality of this one are the Holtzbrooks. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine and his boy came over to split some rounds from some trees that we had felled and cleared on the property, and I had two of the Holtzbrooks 5-star line Arvika that, like this council tool axe, I don't think they're hand forged. I think they come off a drop forge. All be hand attended to by an artisan craftsman. After the drop forge, like this one, they are attended to with a craftsman, and the edge is dressed, and the entire axe blade is polished, fit and finished, and sent to the marketplace. I think Holtzbrooks is the only Swedish company that offers an option in their line, in their 5-star line. And I had two of these Arvikas that are just great basic patterns, splitters and felling axes. And my buddy had a handful of the Holtzbrooks axes, both the drop forged with a carbon slag on them and one of their 5-star line. I don't remember the name of it, it was much smaller. but he and his boy fell so in love with those Holzbrooks that I decided they both had to just go home with them. At the time I knew I had this one. It wasn't getting a whole lot of use because my favorite go-to axes were 5.5 pound single bit OA Norland and a 5 pound OA Norland double bit that spent most of their lives with me out at wood piles. This one, I think you can get it for 60 or 70 bucks. There is no other value in the world for an American felling axe, or for anybody's felling axe, that are fit and finished as well as this one is. Nicely grained, feels good in the hand, just a tremendous, tremendous value from a good American company. Oh gosh, man, this one, I think I mentioned in a previous video, when I gifted those two Arvika Holzbrooks axes to my friend who's a Holzbrook fan from way back, this is what I replaced it with, and it's a, does it say? Yeah. Oh, my hands are shaking. It's a 6-pound Dayton pattern slab of metal with a razor sharp edge on it. And this one goes through knotty wood like a knife through soft butter. Recently, when Hurricane Matthew rolled over our properties here, we were very fortunate that we had no trees down in our yard, but all over the neighborhood there were big trees down. So I made the rounds visiting neighbors with my Mac Pro 850 and my old 1010. God, I miss Robert McCulloch. And anyway, wound up with a whole bunch of nice rounds, and the ones in my neighborhood and across the street that were close. Man, one of those trees was a knotty bugger. And splitting, twisted, knotty, grained red oak is a challenge, but man, when I'm just slicing the ears off with this one goes right through. And replaced those beautiful Holzbrooks Arvikas that I gave away to my buddy. And I kind of miss them, but because man, they're beautiful, beautiful axes. One of them was my grandpa's and had it for a long, long time. I wasn't as sentimental about it as I was with some of the other axes I have. And really, I'm glad my friend Richard and his boy have them now, because their family axe collection looks like its central theme is Holzbrooks. But an amazing axe, good steel. This is, if you look at that Gransfors picture, this is how Gransfors used to finish their axes before they went bankrupt. So cannot say enough about the fit and finish and quality of Council Tool axes. This one is 12 or 13 years old, still has its original handle. I don't know if you can see it. The grain is absolutely awful with this by my standards, and I'm shocked and amazed that it, oh no, those are, oh, the grain is actually pretty good. Those sideways marks are marks from my saw. Sorry, no, and you can look at the sides. You can look at the sides to see that this one has pretty good grain. But it's been a beater out on the long pile, has never broken a handle. Let's see. Here's one on a piece of hickory I just wanted to try as a social experiment. This one, you can look at it and see that the grain is wonky on it. It goes nearly 90 degrees to the hang of the axe, and part of it is heartwood and part of it is sapwood. If anything is going to break, this one will break. So I haven't really put it to the test yet for what a perpendicularly wrong-grained, wrong material handle will do, but I'm curious. I feel like that, let me think of how to say this. I'm probably going to mess it up. I feel like that the tightness of the growth rings may be equally important as the grain orientation. I have had perfectly grained axes that had less growth rings per surface area that broke relatively quickly. And when I mean relatively quickly, 2 or 3 months of steadily using them with Air Force courses, and they break in a month or two. That's not bad. I'm happy to replace a handle every other month for a user. But just looking at the appearance, if you go in a hardware store and you're one of those that buys axe handles, when they look like this is the thing probably to avoid. And let's see, what else have I got here? Here's oh my gosh, there's an 8-pound splitting maul that went home with us 12 years ago from that hardware store. It's gotten some use. I'm not really a maul person. I'd rather use an axe, but 8 pounds, and the profile on it is really stubby and blunt. And I don't even think you need to have a sharp edge on these things to bang through big wood. And then the last is a rehang, another social experiment with some wood that I was going to throw away that both has heartwood and sapwood, and the grain were running completely wonky. And I've hafted it on this old Pulaski from the Forestry Service. And so these are my council tool axes that I have in the modern age. And I know some of my Grantsfors friends are going to want to come strangle me over suggesting that their quality is substandard compared to council tools. And I really don't have an axe to grind. You guys know that my favorite axes are my OA New Orleans, but I cannot say enough about the fit, finish, and quality of the tools that I've had from council tools over the years. The fit and finish of them is the same fit and finish that Grantsfors was attempting before they went bankrupt. I'm pleased for the Swedish companies that, except for Holtzbrook's, that still does fine finishing work on a par with council tools, that all of the other Swedish companies have gone to a less finished, straight out of the drop forge, and just dressing the profile and the edges. And they do a good job with that. And I'm happy both that their companies were able to survive and that they've survived into the modern age where the bushcrafters and the preppers and the self-reliance outfitter folks may be giving them enough business to last for many, many years. Council Tools has been around since the 1800s, still located near the lake at Waccamaw, North Carolina, still producing tools both for the military and the Forestry Service, which speaks highly of them. And again, probably what I consider to be the best quality, the best value, and the best tool for the bushcraft community is probably their boy's axe. Boy's axe on a 28 or 24-inch handle, $30, $35 on the internet any day of the week. If you would like to have a poor man's Velvacut, this is it, out of 1048 steel. Steel is, they claim, is a little better. I've had no problem with their standard line ever. This comes on a Velvacut handle at 28. It has, according to the military specs, a composite wedge instead of the easily damaged aluminum wedge. And for, I think, $65 you can get this, half the price of the Velvacut, and essentially you're getting a Velvacut axe. But really, the best deal on the planet is this little standard boy's axe for $30, $35. Good metal, easy to sharpen, great weight, perfect size for packing in and out, and just a really great value. If you're looking for a high quality axe that just happens to have an incredible price point, you cannot go better than council tools. And one of the parts that I love is that they're made in the good old United States of America by American families. So check them out. I should also add that that all of these council tools, axes, I have purchased myself over the years. I'm not on council tools payroll, but I sound like a commercial doing a, I don't know how to say it where it doesn't sound silly. Just an incredible value for an incredible high quality product. So the next time you see me, I think I'll take this little beater voice axe out with a hatchet, and we'll go do some traditional bushcraft kind of things. And maybe on another day we'll grab those old velvet cuts out of my wife's and mine's car kit. Perhaps in the future, I don't know, maybe Christmas is coming up. I do not have their newest offering, but if you want to see a really good video series of it, check out Dave at High Carbon Steel Love. He's got a whole series starting from the beginning of the year last year on his favorite council tool axes. He's incredibly informative, insanely talented, and just genuinely a nice guy on his YouTube channel. And he has the newest council tool woodcraft hackable axe. So until we see you the next time, friends, take care, have a great Thanksgiving, and a great Christmas if we don't see you before then. Thanks so much.